Welcome. 52. Jesus fights temptation. Jesus, when tempted in the desert, teaches us how to fight evil. Evil takes us away from the Eucharist and the Word of God. Evil brings us down to become lost kings and queens, far from the world and from our church. We risk thinking that we are the only ones who can handle everything. Evil degrades us to the point of thinking that we own the goods and the people. Evil diminishes us. It pulls us away from others and from God. In the midst of temptations, the Spirit drives Jesus out into the desert. Mark chapter 1, verse 12. The Spirit drives Jesus to the desert. Jesus goes freely because he is eager to fulfill his mission and to lead us on the road of life to life everlasting. He shows us how to fight temptations. He remained in the desert for 40 days, tempted by Satan. He was among wild beasts, and the angels ministered to him. Mark chapter 1, verse 13. Jesus is tempted by evil, but not like us. He fights temptation for us. The temptation to move away from the life and love of God. The temptation of evil against God. The temptation of what distracts us from God. And the temptation to possess what exists by repelling God. The worst and most subtle temptation is to think that God is not love. Jesus doesn't need to fight temptations for himself. Jesus is already victorious. He fights temptations for us and to show us how to be free. Every time we are tempted, Jesus fights with us, if we allow him to intervene in our life. There are many fruits growing in the desert. There is not much water. There are not many fruits growing in the desert. There is not much water. The desert certainly means death for a person. Let's perceive that the desert contrasts with paradise, which was promised to us before the fall, before the original sin, the sin that only baptism can wash out. Jesus overcame the desert of temptations that leads to death, and he turns it into a fertile land. Jesus comes to tell us not to fear, because he has conquered death by leading us into his life. He invites us to walk behind him, to walk on the path of real life. It's now the time of the great cleansing of our person, to empty it of all that is useless and to let it fill up with the love of God. May all the shady areas of our existence be purified in the love of God. Let's enjoy it. We will then avoid running into evil.